What's up, y'all? It's cousin Chet with Dilagin. So the first person to comment that I need to shave is right. Second thing, welcome everybody. It's great to see you. Great to be here. Great to be with Dilagin and sit down for another podcast. I think we're around 31 episodes now or something like that. We're around 20 consistent viewers. Nobody's really leaving comments or liking, but I'm getting some subscriptions. We are getting some subscriptions, and I'm getting some really good feedback, and I appreciate it. Shout out to Lucky, because I do believe Lucky is going to be watching this. So Lucky, thanks for your support. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it very much.
I like you more than a friend, Lucky.
Wow, do you even know who Lucky is?
We just got introduced.
Yeah, so Lucky's a fan of the show, and has been watching back episodes and doing what fans do and giving some good feedback. So thank you. Today's episode, if we ever try to have a theme and we try to stay on a theme, hopefully we'll do it today. Our major theme is 420. 420 is the international number recognition for the marijuana smokers of the world, to kind of say, let's go smoke. It's becoming a big marijuana holiday as the 4th or the 20th of April, the 4th month being April, or is it April?
Yes.
Yeah. 420. But as we were getting ready, we were talking about some things, and I was going to tell Dylan about the vagus nerve.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear about that.
So this is a little bit before we start talking 420 stuff. So the vagus nerve is a really long nerve that runs down like the front of your forehead, the back of your throat, basically down your spine, all the way down to your tailbone. It is one of the main nerves that communicates with the rest of your body. You can do what's called a vagus nerve reset. Oh, Vegas, Vagus. This is not Las Vegas. All right. So anyhow,
my conspiracy brain would have gone.
I know,
weird
you'd have been
places
like, wow,
with that if you hadn't addressed that right away.
What kind of gambling is Chet talking about, right? Yeah. So this is not a gamble. This is real fact. So everybody's heard of somebody saying, I'm going to go take a cold shower, right? Because and usually you hear about somebody that's in a high emotional state. Usually you hear about when people get like super horny, right? And they know they're not about to get something. They're like, oh, I'm going to go take a cold shower.
For me, it's funny you say that, because I haven't taken a cold shower. I have. The first time I started taking cold showers, it wasn't because I knew about Wim Hof and how there's actually this like fine physiological balance that the cold kind of activates with your body. I didn't know that. I remember the first time I took a really cold shower was when I was just completely overwhelmed. Like, I was super stressed, like felt like a piece of shit, like can't be done. Like, I just fucked it all up, probably.
And so you took a cold shower?
Yeah. I remember, like, whenever I would go to the gym and, like, work out real hard, it was, like, after that, it was just, like, maybe I should try, like, super cold water. When was the last time I was in super cold water? And it was painful, so it was, like, I just started doing it just as a way to be, like, all right, well, how tough am I?
Tougher than me.
But it's funny you say that, because not only does that make sense because of what I know about Wim Hof, but like, it makes a lot of sense, because I remember there was one time in particular, it was at a fucking Planet Fitness. I fucking hate Planet Fitness, but it was the cheapest place I could afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember going to Planet Fitness, and I remember afterwards, like, blasting myself with cold water, just like I'd gotten used to it up to the point where it was like I could kind of just see like how long it would take me before I just completely was used to the cold. Like I went pretty far with it for a while, and there was one time in a fucking Planet Fitness in Huber Heights where I remember blasting myself with cold water, and it was like I slowly, like it was like worse than it had ever been. And I remember this weird sensation, like it kind of like I was able to take the feeling of the cold water, and it was like in my imagination it was like all of the individual drops just kind of connected with the cold, and I had this sensation of being underwater. I had this sensation of being underwater, and then with my eyes closed, like I got this impression that I could see things.
Wow.
And I started seeing fishes and shit going around. And then I just saw something. I didn't see what it looked like. I just saw something big move towards me. And it was like, that was the point where I was like, fuck, all right, shower's over. I'm clean. But I for real, like, on God, I swear this on a Bible. It was like that. Like I've had moments like that before, where I'm aware, like it's all in my head, like it's completely psychological. But it's like just the bizarre Alice in Wonderland nature of the experience. I'm like, I don't think I can share that with anybody.
Sure, you can.
Like,
and more people should share about their experiences.
Yeah, but it's like, it's kind of frustrating. Incidentally, this is kind of a 420 thing for me, because what you're saying about the vagus nerve.
And I'm not done yet, but go ahead.
Well, what you're saying about the vagus nerve so far is like it's a nerve that basically runs. It's the nerve that
it's one of the major nerves of our body.
Your nervous system.
And here's why I mention it, and here's how to use it. Right. The reason why I mentioned the cold shower is because that's what people are triggering their vagus nerve. They're basically trying to do a vagus reset, whether they realize it or not, by taking a cold shower. Yeah. So this is what happens, and I may demonstrate it sometime. I thought about potentially demonstrating it today, but one really good way to, other than a cold shower, to test this out to see if it works for you, is to get a bowl that's big enough that you could put some, fill it up about halfway with water. And you want it to be cold water, so you may want to put a little bit of ice cubes in there, right? So, because it needs to be cold water. And then what you do is you dip your face into it, and you count to 20. So it's like a 20-second in the water. Now, what your vagus nerve is going to do is your vagus nerve is going to shut down everything you don't need to survive, right? So what your vagus nerve thinks is happening is it thinks that you just fell off an ice raft in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, right? Yeah. And it's going to shut everything down except breathing, except heart rate, just essential, you know what I mean? You're not going to be hungry. You're not going to be anything that you don't need to survive in that moment, including your emotional state. So the greatest benefit is that it can just, I will promise you, it doesn't always work for me, but it has a really good ability to clear your emotional state, whatever your emotional state is.
That sounds really fucking useful.
It is. If you're like, so it's really good for like addicts, right? Mm-hmm. Who are having like maybe a really bad triggered craving. Mm-hmm. It's really good for people who are emotionally volatile. So depression, if you deal with like anger, rage issues, any extreme, like if you just feel your emotions really extremely kind of thing, or you're just in that funk mode. Because that's what I was thinking about it. Because I don't know what your mood is right now, honestly. I feel like you're tired. That's your affect to me.
Yeah.
Like you're just tired.
Yeah.
A little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
just because you're tired. I think Dylan and I both have like this underlying annoyance. We're just like a little bit aggravated with the world, like just
that's
all
a good.
the time.
That's a good way to put it.
Dude, I got the Joe Biden hair going on right now.
Joe Biden hair.
Yeah, how it just kind of like,
literally nobody
looks like a
would've
helmet
thought
on the
that
back.
if you hadn't have said it.
I thought it because I saw it. Let's go, Brandon. Anyway,
In the most MAGA themed episode so far.
yeah, this is gonna be the most MAGA theme. So
Just solid red.
what's up, 420? Thank you, Bob Marley. Thank you too. First, I want to start off by giving a shout out to all the old heads. All the old heads like Willie Nelson, Matthew McConaughey, Dave Chappelle, all the dudes that were Woody Harrelson, Snoop Dogg, all the people who before marijuana was legal, they were the original. Before the internet, they were out here. They're like, you know what? Love marijuana. I'm promoting it. And it was people like you and people like us or people like me who still doing the underground thing, were criminalized, were thrown in jail or threatened with prison terms for dealing with the lovely Mary Jane, a plant that, in my mind, is about as harmful as sugar or coffee. Like, so anyway,
I don't think if you're talking.
shout out, just first of all, shout out to all y'all old heads, all the people that were doing it before it was legal. Thank you.
Yeah,
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, if you were talking about weed, I would be willing to bet that all of those things are significantly more dangerous for your health than weed is. Because
Yeah.
I've seen this in
I
real
don't know.
time.
I think it's about equal sugar.
My buddy brought this up. I have a way to tie all this back together.
Do you
but
think?
I'm gonna ramble for a bit.
Oh no.
But that's something that my buddy brought to my attention at work. One of the buddies I work with, he's a guy I drive home. He mentioned to me. He was like, "Have you ever asked yourself where the internet went?" He does this shit to me all the time because he knows I'm like.
This is not working.
Bob Marley, give this pen some strength.
Bob Marley.
And Bob
And
answered.
Bob, we trust.
And Bob answered.
Thank you, Bob. I love Bob Marley. Go ahead.
No, but my buddy, he brought up to me one day at work. He likes giving me these little conspiracy theory riddles.
Okay.
And sometimes I'm like, dude, I already know the answer to this one. We can just talk about it. You don't have to be cryptic. Sometimes that's how I feel, but other times it's like, it's kind of fun.
Right.
So he brings up to me one day, he's like, "Have you ever asked yourself where the internet went?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Isn't there just more of it?" And he goes, "No." He was like, "Let's check it out." He was like, "Let's go to Google." So he goes to the computer and he pulls it up and he goes, "All right, so let's search Amanda Nunes." He was like, "Here you go. It's like you see Amanda here at the top, and if you scroll down, there's different articles about Amanda." Well, if you scroll down and you skip all the way over to page 158, and you click on that page number of Google results, you'll find the same 5 articles you saw on page 1. But there's this very soft illusion that, like, shit, Amanda Nunes is like the shit. Everybody knows about Amanda Nunes.
She's got 20, 50, 100 pages of, yeah.
But it's really just the same 5 places. Nobody clicks past, page 10, page
I don't know
20.
many people that click past page 1.
That's the point. And he was like, it hasn't actually gotten that much bigger. There's just there's a Twitter, there's a Facebook, there's these places that everybody flocks around, and that's the internet. But so much of the surface web is just kind of recycled.
Great. I get it.
But
I get that point. Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up because,
And we don't even have the single app yet, right? We don't have the one app that they want to create. Somebody wants to be the first one to create the one app, which is that one app that you go to for everything. Your banking, your social media, your everything.
oh, somebody desires that, but that seems like
It just, there's not been one that's been set up to where people are like, yeah, that's the one app.
that's it. That
it.
seems borderline and insurmountable.
I think it'll happen one day. But so you said you're gonna wrap this around a 420.
Yeah.
Dígame.
And that's the thing, and ironically, yeah, I've been kind of frustrated for a lot of the day. And for the last stretch, like the last couple weeks, I've felt myself really frustrated by, like, that's the kind of thing. Like, the kind of thing that, like, I remember experiencing in the Planet Fitness just a little ways due that away. There's certain experiences I've had where I'm literally dying to know what's up with that. Like, what is the nature of the Wim Hof method? Because I think there's a whole lot more to it than just what Wim Hof has told Vice about. I think there's really deep answers to really deep questions, and we're kind of at the point now where the information is out there, and it's like what I've said 100 times before about how I have a hard time relating to people that aren't curious.
Yeah.
And there's so much shit going on. I can't believe people aren't talking about bigger stuff.
I think there are some people are. Unfortunately, there's just a lot more people talking about the Kardashians or the fake housewives of wherever.
And ironically, I think this relates to 420.
I'm listening.
Because that's always the thing. That's always the thing about weed. Like, if I have some sort of quote unquote psychological addiction to weed,
Mm-hmm.
I've spent enough time thinking about altered states of consciousness, and not even from a druggy point of view, like largely like what I was talking about in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Is I've thought a lot about altered states of consciousness because it's like from the time I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
it was like my imagination was just where anything could happen.
Yeah.
It was just a question of what things did I want to actually imagine happening. And it was like, I remember always kind of having that like thought loop spinning in my head. I understand that's a super idiosyncratic thing to say. Like, that's very eccentric.
Well, I think it's kind of what I said earlier a moment ago. I think more people should share their oh yeah.
It's Bob. It's Bob sending a little thumbs
Their
up.
mystical experiences.
Yeah.
You know, it's been dangerous in most places throughout history to do so. And, you know, I think some people will discount them. You know, people will discount metaphysical experiences that are onset by drug use, marijuana use, hallucinogens, lack of sleep, or just those intense moments in the shower alone when you're able to kind of clear out the rest of the world and really go inside, because I think that's like a majority of mystical experiences, that ability to go inside. And I know for me, like, marijuana has done a lot of different things for me. In I think everything is a two-edged sword. I think everything in moderation. I think that anybody can abuse anything. I don't care what your vice is or what your coping skill is. You can go to the gym too much. I know that's a coping mechanism of yours, is working out.
I've hit that wall.
You know, obviously drug use and alcohol. There are some coping mechanisms and things that we do that are less harmful than others, but the person that goes out shopping and gets themselves in tremendous amounts of debt, as an addiction or whatever have you. So for me, one of the things because I enjoy my imagination too, and marijuana helps me get rid of the anxieties of the world and enjoy my imagination. Sometimes too much. Because I can, you don't want to get rid of all the anxiety all the time, because, you want to function. You still want to take care of stuff, and there definitely is marijuana can take away some motivation, because the anxiety is that motivation. Like, oh, I got to get this done. I've got to, I got to write this paper. I've got to meet this deadline. I've got to get this done so that I can get the next thing done for the kids, or whatever the things are that
you
you're
sound
doing.
like an extrovert who finds marijuana is useful for making time to be introverted. Like you sound like somebody who's extroverted, and marijuana brings the introversion out of you.
In some instances, that is very real. Yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but I definitely, I definitely can see how you would see that in me. You know what I mean? Like, and yes, I think there's some truth to that.
Because I say that because I feel like it does the opposite for me.
Well, because I'm a high anxiety person. My anxiety is like overboard. It comes from living a life where you never know what's going to happen next and got to keep your head on a swivel kind of shit. And like, when you live with people that are emotionally volatile, especially when like that emotional volatility is like rage, and it gets real loud and real, like things being thrown around and stuff like that. I think my anxiety just kind of comes like a PTSD or some shit. Anyway, marijuana helps settle that. It helps ease that, right? It helps ease the anxiety that I got going on. Like any other happy drug that they would want to put me on. But I mean, that's for me. And that's like one of the ways that I enjoy marijuana. I enjoy marijuana too, because like I said, even it's like when I go swimming, man, the water just takes the world away for a minute. That's what the herb does. It just takes the world away, man. I don't have to hear everybody. I don't have to, like you're saying, like I get this introverted moment to myself, and herb helps me get there.
Yeah. There's something watery about it in that way.
Yeah. There's something. I mean, I've heard people describe it as water. I need some water, and they're like almost a slang. But you said you're the opposite.
I mean, I feel like that's my natural mode, is because I grew up where it was like there was no noise.
Mm-hmm.
When there was people getting upset and emotional, it was so clearly like over the top dramatic that it was. Anyway, most of my childhood was spent predominantly by myself in the woods.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was just me and my imagination. So it was like being in my imagination is kind of like, that's the natural mode I'm used to. I can just ignore whatever's going on over here and just be in my head. Like, screw that noise.
Yeah. I think I learned that. I think my imagination and marijuana use as a result was just like my way of escaping all the noise. All the noise. It's like my own. I'm really like you're actually making me pretty introspective right now, because I'm realizing like how right you are, that what marijuana did was it gave me a space of my own. And the fact of the matter is like I love that, because like I can be anywhere. I can be anywhere. I mean, I can be anywhere without herb. I would much prefer much more to be there with herb. I can be anywhere with herb. What are we doing? We're living on the beach. We're living in a hut. We're living in a cabin. What are we doing? I don't care. Do we have good people around? Like I've definitely had those days where like I don't care. Like, going to like festivals and stuff like that, like festival days. When you're young, when I was younger, it was a lot easier to do, right? You could like live with, just good people and being good people, So anyway, like, but a little bit to the detriment, right? Like sometimes, like it's like I'm content, so that's another part of that anxiety and motivation and drive, because I'm like, I got good people around, I got herb around, I ain't hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what else do I want? like legitimate. Like for me, like what else do I want? If I've got good people,
what else can
and some food,
what else can I imagine?
Like how much? What?
And can I make that real?
And what's the cost benefit? What's the risk benefit of going after that? Right? Mm-hmm. Do I want to own a jet ski? Do I want to do all the work for that weekend, which is mostly work anyway, to go ride that thing a couple times and get that little like cocaine dopamine hit from it? No. Like for me, not really.
Is my life really just a series of activities I want to check off the list?
Right. No, my life is more about I want to fucking love and feel love and be with people, good people, and you know what I mean? Have good conversations, and you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want to be homeless and poor. I don't want to be like completely destitute by any means. For me, like collecting a bunch of material things is not my thing. And is that a function of me smoking? Or is me smoking because I just naturally I'm inclined that way, and so is this. You know what I mean? Because I think there are some people that they're just naturally inclined. They like to be wired. They like to be amped up. They like to be go, 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 right? So what's their favorite drug? What's their drug of choice? Meth, cocaine. You know what I'm saying? Adderall.
That's right? Not including any of the prescriptions.
Sure, but I'm just saying, like, people sometimes look at cause and effect, and it's like maybe it's just the two energies match.
And maybe it's a coincidence that the introduction of coffee to Europe maybe it's just a coincidence that occurred right before the Renaissance and the Enlightenment.
I heard, sidetrack, that the reason why we have breaks at work is because there was some guy that had a factory, and he realized that if he gave his production workers 10 minutes to suck down a cup of coffee, that afternoon they produce more than other afternoons.
That checks
out. I don't remember where I heard that, but it was a legitimate sounding person. I mean, these days, who knows what's real? Somebody probably made it up, and you're like, sounds true, that sounds logical, that sounds reasonable, it's true.
Yeah.
But anyhow, back to herb. So, some random facts. Marijuana wasn't even illegal until like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, not even 100 years. We're talking about 90 years ago.
Yeah.
Good Citizen's about to look it up for us, but I think it's like 1938, 1939. Now we can go into all the different reasons why.
Yeah, it was.
We can go into the multiple the variables that kind of collided together, both racial and economic and industrial. My goodness. You sure this is Bob? Golly, Bob. It's being harsh on me, bro.
A dab will do you.
A dab will do you. But yeah. And so, and that's funny because it's almost like alcohol prohibition didn't work. So then all of a sudden they're like, but we're going to do this marijuana prohibition.
Like, have you ever heard anybody mention how
It's almost like a trade-off. It's like the mob, and everybody was like, well, if you take this away, what are we going to have? What are you saying?
I was going to say, have you ever heard anybody say how, or mention how throughout big social shifts in history, you'll see that societies almost trade political issues back and forth. Sort of like how in the 50s, you couldn't even show a husband and wife sleeping in the same bed on television.
Right.
Like, sex was very much the taboo discussion. Nowadays, even conservative people get rope-a-doped into having sexual conversations.
They're having fucking strip shows with drag queens for kids nowadays, so it's all weird.
That's what I'm saying, though, is... But at that same time period in the 50s, white people, black people didn't hang out together as frequently, so it was more in vogue to just openly share a racial attitude about something.
Yeah.
And then fast forward about 50, 60 years later, people have the exact opposite attitudes. And it's like another big issue like that has been drug use. And I suspect part of that is because, like, back in the day, there weren't a whole, like, if you rewind 200 years into the past, very rarely would you find any drug legislation. Like, you wouldn't find any legal code for, like, all right, these are the things you're allowed to consume, and these are the things that are no good to consume.
Right.
You would see very little of that. To your point about William Randolph Hearst buddying up with racist politicians in the 30s. Like, there's kind of a similar social engineering thing going on there, because Hearst was just trying to put the hemp
industry
products
down.
out of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And him and the DuPont family, right?
I believe so.
I always heard it was the DuPont family that
sounds familiar.
They just basically didn't want their textile industry to compete with hemp, because hemp is so renewable and so useful in so many applications.
Yeah, it's supposed to be super easy on the soil too, I think. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
it's been a long time since I got into at the one point when I did some research and read some books. Sorry, I don't know why I want to take it apart.
Back to Bob.
Back to Bob.
Bob-minded things.
Happy 420, everybody. This is a great time to have a commercial break. This episode is brought to you by marijuana. 420. So have you ever heard the story of 420?
I don't think so.
All right. And back to the regularly scheduled programming. So
brought to you by fidget spinners.
Brought to you by
magnets, bro.
So apparently, I think the legend that I've understood it as is that there were these kids that were like in college, I guess, and they just started meeting at 420 because it happened to be like in between situations. on campus. And then as time went on, they just said 420. You know, as like, you're going to meet me at 420. We're going to do and then it became, you know, a code word for let's go smoke some herbal derbles. Yeah. What are some of your favorite slang? You could put this in the comments, everybody. What are some of your favorite slang words for marijuana?
Slang terms.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah.
Skunk.
Skunk.
Yeah.
Do you like the smell of a skunk?
No.
Really?
But that's why.
That's why?
Because I remember, because growing up, growing up wasn't that long ago. I started smoking weed, but I always remember that, like, being like, my mindset was like, you got to deal with the smell. Think of it like you got sprayed by a skunk. That's how thorough you have to be
to get back in the house.
Masking the sin, yeah.
That's actually a good.
It's like, it communicates something vital. To
like, and a powerful smell.
Early 2000s kids. Skunks. Only 2000s kids will remember this.
Right. No. I actually like the smell of skunk. There's something sweet about it to me. It doesn't, like, like, if I'm driving down the road and I smell a skunk, I'm like, it smells like good herb. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's
I'm not like
absurd thing I've ever.
I'm not like, oh my god, that's a skunk. There was a skunk. Oh my god, there's a skunk. Like, I was like, oh, that smells kind of.
It's never been.
It smells like Liz Claiborne. Like, Liz Claiborne would hate me for that one, but it's got that. There's a sweetness to it. So
yeah.
So yeah, when was the first time you smoked herb?
The first time?
Yeah, the first time that you.
It's probably like 19.
Right on.
I was at this pool party for this lady who always would come into the antique store at the time. Anyways, I was hanging out with a bunch of people from the antique store in Tip City.
Right on.
I remember.
Like, somebody was just like, hey, we're about to go smoke some herbal
I remember
derbles.
it was at one of those Hobbit pipes.
Hobbit pipes?
Yeah, the real long ones. You gotta hold it down here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like a true, like, tobacco pipe? Like,
yeah.
Right on. That's kind of cool for your
like
first experience to have such an apparatus.
Like a hipster, like, wizard pipe.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Anyways. Yeah, no,
Do you remember what it was like? Do you remember what your expectations were versus what
I remember
your experience was?
I've heard a couple people say this is what it's supposed to be like the first time.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, that acid-like sensation of, like, things were coming in waves.
Right on.
Like, the first time's supposed to be, like, very psychedelic.
Can be. I think you're right. I think a lot of people have kind of a.
Probably depends on the strains.
Right. And the potency
does.
and all that jazz, yeah.
But
marijuana is one of those things that's actually kind of hard to, like, pinpoint, like, because I think a lot of people respond to it.
Yeah.
Like, there is a general response, but there's also, like, there's a lot of people that have their own experience with it and the strains.
Well, like, that was one thing I was gonna say earlier was I would, like, ever since I was a kid, I remember always thinking about altered states of consciousness,
right?
Because I recognized that, like, I had those, like, my mood, my circumstance, like, what did I do that day? Like, there was this kind of sense of, like, man, my mindset, my framework I'm looking through is kind of pliable. Like, it's kind of bendable. And I can kind of change the way I look at things. And that was always an altered state of consciousness. Well, I didn't call it that, but you know what I mean. Anyways, point is like, fast forward, post-Hobbit pipe, that was, like, my mindset already when it came to weed was, okay, this is going to be an altered state of consciousness I've never experienced before. it was a very deliberate decision on my part to even try weed.
Right.
But it was like so many Joe Rogan episodes in, and so many of pulling up these old studies from out on the West Coast. I mean, that's the thing about like what my buddy from work was saying to me is, where'd the internet go? Well, frankly, there's probably at least half a dozen different research papers or articles. I remember reading pre Hobbit Pipe. I'm reading these studies and trying to find out, okay, well, what are the potential like health setbacks of weed? Like, what is like at smoke? I would imagine it's going to harm my lungs. But I remember putting eyeballs to these papers, like reading the abstracts, and then going down and picking through certain sections that I could actually follow along with. Like actually reading hard, like doing hard reading, doing the type of reading that like feels like work, and verifying to myself, it's not even that clear there are like health effects. There's clearly people can develop an attitudinal dependency on it, but a dearth of evidence that wasn't there of how dangerous it was, and that was what was going into my mind. Like that was what I was going into the Hobbit Pipe with.
You think this one off?
Probably. Brought to you by fidget spinners.
Brought to you by fidget spinners.
Huh. Did.
Blinded by the light. What happens?
We could pause it.
No, pause. Why? This is what happens when you smoke weed. Shit happens. What are we doing right now? Is this not working?
I don't think so. It's not charging. Hand me that one.
Which one? This one? Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna have Good Citizen look some stuff up. Maybe. So like, you know, I would definitely not say that it's not harmful. I definitely will say that it's not physically addictive. Like, you can smoke weed for a long time. You stop smoking weed, you're not gonna have like headaches like you will. Like, caffeine withdrawals will give you headaches. You know, you're not gonna have a withdrawal. Like, I think even if you stop doing sugar, you might have some withdrawals. I don't know. I've never tried.
I did.
Huh? Do you have withdrawals when you stop sugar?
Yeah.
What are sugar withdrawals like?
Big cravings.
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
It's the other one, the top one.
Nice.
But but overall, like, you're not gonna get sick, right? Now, I do think it's psychologically. I think like it's anxiety, right? You don't smoke herb. If you smoke herb on a regular basis and then you stop smoking herb, you're gonna feel some anxiety spikes. Because I think that's one of the biggest benefits of it, right? Is it helps calm that anxiety down.
Well, there's kind of a danger in that's the only time you set aside to be alone with yourself or your imagination.
Well, but I mean, I don't. You know, for me, like, I don't smoke at work, but if I'm not working, I'm probably high. I mean, like, I'm one of those 24/7 if I can be. You know what I mean? Overall, so I mean, for me, yeah. At times it was introverted, but it's also been how I've socialized so much of my life.
Yeah.
Like, my socialization came from finding somebody else that smoked herb and sitting down with sharing a peace pipe,
I can relate to that
type thing. So it's been both. I mean, I've gravitated towards marijuana smokers a lot until I just stopped gravitating towards them and just was like, I'm good on my like got tired of messing with people.
Like, I think it's more of
and kind of got more recluse as I got older.
It's kind of a it's kind of a social contagion more than it is anything else. Because it's like, yeah, that seems, and I say that because like it's super reasonable if you think about it. Like, that's something that people bond over and subsequently forms its own sort of culture, is like people who habitually like, dude, I'm stressed out, I'm pissed off, some shit happened to me at work today and I can't, I'm so fucking mad, so I'm gonna hit this blunt. You want to hit this? And it's like people who just habitually calm themselves down that way. It's like you can kind of see the personality of weed culture. And a lot of it revolves around, people smoke to chill out and just hang out with each other.
Well, I think, relationships oftentimes are, the catalyst for many relationships is having something in common, right? And so, whether it's we both ride Harleys, we both drive Jeeps, we drove by VW Bugs, or your coffee people, your cigarette crowd. Remember, like back in the, there's still people, I'm sure, at work that they go take those 5-minute breaks together. They're socializing. They're creating friendships of bond. They're not just working together, right? Yeah. There's a social situation. And the same thing goes, the golf course. Marijuana is very much the same. It's got its own culture. People that are like-minded, they've got the similar vibe, they like the vibe, and then the culture starts, the next thing you got Grateful Dead dancing bears, and you're like, oh, I bet you that person smokes, but then you got to realize too, those might be LSD people. I don't know. Grateful Dead people, they be tripping. But anyhow, like my point is yes, it's very much a social thing, but it attracts those like-minded people. I think personally, because it's becoming legal, it's opening up itself to a whole new group of people. The people that maybe enjoy it, but they were not willing to be the dregs of society. They were not really willing to be seen as hippies and, the negative connotations that came with it. But yeah, it's very social, man. It's definitely been, for me, in my personal experience, my understanding is the first time that I ever inhaled marijuana, I was 2 years old. My dad blew it in my face, gave me a buzz, basically shotgunned me type shit, and then was entertained by his 2-year-old being high. And I'm assuming he was high too. My brain really loves it, and
that's probably a fun day with Dad.
Well, there's been many a speculation about my relationship with my father and my relationship with marijuana, and my relationship with my father and our relationship with marijuana. Because my dad was an everyday, all day smoker too, and I didn't grow up with him. But so 2 years old, then my parents are divorced. I'm at 5. We go to visit Dad a couple summers. He lived in Florida, so I'm like 7, 8, 9, and I remember one year smoking with him at that age, and my brother, who was a year younger than me. So even if I'm 9, my younger brother is 7. With my 2 cousins I'm probably like a year older than me and then like 3 years older than me. So we're talking about everybody's under 10. He's got 4 kids and he's smoking. Yeah. Great dad. I do love you, Dad, regardless. But anyway.
Same page.
So So yeah, I mean, I was introduced to it young, and then as a teenager, it really was the introverted thing. I remember I was a sophomore in high school. We were moving schools again. I was tired of making new friends over again. You know what I mean? And I just needed an escape, bro. And I remember I would go to history class, and DP is what I'm gonna call him. And if anybody ever knows, I doubt you would, because nobody would even put the two of us together, really. Which is how beautiful it was, because we weren't like from the same caste system. We weren't this, you know, like we didn't run with the same people, but we both would bring in our history books, and he'd set his history book on my desk, and I'd set mine on his, and mine had $5 in it, and his had a joint in it. And so I took his book home that night, so I'd smoke like a joint a day. And I'd literally, like, I didn't have a job or anything like that. Man, we were changing schools. I would literally basically just bum after, you know, like those guys at lunchtime, they'd be like, hey, man, you gonna do anything with that change? Are you gonna need change? I was that dude. And I'd do it until I got $5 so I get my joint. That sounds like some addict behavior, really, but I mean, really, the truth is that it's not addict behavior. It's somebody that wants to escape, and marijuana had to be the door. You know what I mean? You can call it addict behavior or whatever. I was just trying to escape my situation and find some peace, you know? And marijuana was that peace for me. You know, if your thing is jacking off or shopping, or, you know, maybe you find your passion in something else, that's awesome. But we're 420 people, and our passion is marijuana. I am, anyway. I do, and I you know, I feel like.
Do you feel like it's come with any setbacks?
Sure.
Such as?
Well, for most of my life, it's been illegal. So I've always been a criminal. Most of my life, I've been a criminal. That's a setback in and of itself. I had to fear that they were going to come take me away every day. And that, I mean, I've had that since I was a kid, fucking being at home alone, and the cops coming and like, where's your parents? I'm like, my mom's at work. And I was always afraid they'd take me away. So my issues with police are compounded. But yeah, I've also almost always, most of my life, other than when I was in the Navy, I've had weed on me. Other than, excuse me, the period of time where I was on probation because I got busted for selling weed. And then I was on probation and I minded my P's and Q's. But yeah, for most of my life, like, I'm always riding dirty. And so I'm always, you know what I mean? I'm always worried about, like, I could go to jail today or whatever kind of thing. I think too, I do think that there is, you know, some aspects of my life that, again, it's hard to say like which the catalyst is, right? Is it just that I'm naturally a person that's just like, I just want to be content. I don't need to try to fucking please anybody. I'm not here to impress anybody. I'm not here to collect a bunch of junk and say, look at me, I got all the toys. You know, like, that's just never been my thing, man. Like I'd rather find good people than good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather randomly talk to a good person that I'm never going to talk to again than invest my time in collecting stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so my life is this is part of my temperament. Marijuana and I vibe. Yes. Does it enhance those? I think so. I think, you know, maybe I didn't have to fail 6 times to earn my bachelor's degree. Maybe I didn't have to struggle as much as I did when, you know, in school specifically. But see, here's the thing. I struggled in school anyway, way before I started smoking weed. I have attention issues. It enhances those. It doesn't help them, right? You know what I mean? Getting high does not help me focus. So, you know, and I, as a person who naturally doesn't focus well, it's definitely like hindered me in that way. You know, I'd love to say that I think my relationships would have been better, but I think honestly, if I'd have just chosen better partners or been a better partner, you know, but I think in a lot of ways, like I chose poorly. And why am I with somebody that doesn't enjoy marijuana, like, or somebody that's like against marijuana and gets aggravated every time I smoke it, which means they're aggravated with me every day. You know what I mean? So why am I in a relationship where it's like, well, if you love me, you would quit smoking marijuana? It's like, well, if you love me, you would just accept me that I smoke marijuana. You know what I mean? Like it's for me, it's a medicine. Just look at it like it's a medicine, bro. I don't care. I don't care about your other opinions about it. For me, it's a medicine. I and I love it. Like I don't like, oh no, I gotta take this medicine. I'm like, fuck it. This is how my life is. This is how it turned out. Cool. It could have turned out so much worse. Like, look, there are people that got skeletons in their closet way worse than me smoking my weed. You know, we're talking about people that touch little kids and shit like that. Fuck you if you want to judge me for smoking some weed. For real. Like, who am I hurting? Who have I hurt besides myself if you want to judge me as such? Like, who have I hurt by smoking some weed? Or selling it, or growing it, or doing anything else with it? Who's getting hurt by it? Zero people. Zero. The worst thing is that my lungs are black and shriveled up like raisins. That's the worst thing. And that's mine. You know what I mean? The worst thing is that I got probably a spot in the back of my throat that makes me cough. Happy 420, everybody. But yeah, man, like, you know, like, look, I drank heavy for a little bit. Obviously, I struggled to figure out how to cope with this life that I was given. And I looked for alternate states of consciousness as well. Although at the time, I had no clue what that was or what it even meant. I just knew I liked it. And I didn't care if it was alcohol, weed, acid. I was scared of hard drugs. I was scared of like cocaine, heroin, shit like, you know, shit that really people get addicted to, like really makes people sick. I was scared of that shit. When somebody told me crack, you can get addicted one time, I was like, I would probably love it. So no, thank you. Because I'll probably fucking, like, love it.
That's always how I felt about Adderall.
Yeah.
When I was in college, because I knew enough to know there were probably quite a few people there where I was at, like, taking Adderall and, like, writing all 5 of their semester papers in one 24-hour setting. I knew that's a reality.
Yeah.
But I always, like with nicotine or caffeine, it was like whatever the stimulants are, like those get me every time.
Right.
Like those get me hard.
Wow. Hey, real quick, that thing just flashed and told me that my battery's going low. Now we just turn off the light again.
Wow. For shits and gigs.
Another commercial for 420 marijuana. Legalization has been an issue, and I think one of the biggest things that I appreciate about our modern day is watching it become legal. Thank you. I'm very grateful. I don't think that my civil disobedience and being aware that I was breaking a law and therefore a criminal. Again, I like to call it civil disobedience. Because that's all. As far as I'm concerned, if like all you're dealing with that's all it is. It's civil disobedience. It's like you are standing up against stupid laws. Yeah. Because again, who am I harming?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I've noticed that the negative, like any negative effects that I have from it, they seem like they're largely just attitudinal. That's weird.
Whose attitude? Yours or theirs? Yours or
Mine.
others?
No, mine.
Oh.
As in, like, it's sort of like it becomes part of a routine that I'm running. Like, I form, like, very particular routines. Like,
give me an example.
when I'm stoned. Well, like, for instance...
What is that? It's so hard. Oh, wow. That's on camera and everything.
If anybody needed...
Happy 420.
If anybody needed a Vegas reset.
Bruh. Way too hard, bruh. My God.
Anyways, I agree. I've actually had the thought for the last couple weeks. I think I'm gonna, like, take a break from the weed.
Yeah.
Because usually I hit I've done this before where it's like I hit a point where I'm like, you know what, like, I know what to expect. I know what to expect from it, and it's not going to give me any new, fresh experiences.
So are you talking about just like a tolerance break, or you just like, I think I've experienced marijuana, I'm kind of done with it?
It's like I don't feel like I have to be a hip young square any more than I feel like I need to be a pothead.
Huh?
As in, like, I don't know. I just felt like I needed a break. I think I've needed time to sit with myself.
Mm.
And I don't like over depending on things.
Mm.
So it's like something in me's always like Jiminy Cricket's always ringing some sort of bell.
You got that stoic in you. It's like, I gotta suffer a little bit to feel alive.
I want to argue no, but it kind of seems like I jive with that in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the day, you'd be that dude that was like flogging himself walking down the street. I'm so bad.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm horrible. Like, if you were in like medieval Catholicism, you'd be like, well, you're the firstborn, so you wouldn't be that. It'd be your brother that had to walk around strapping himself like that because he's the one that had to go to the church because you got the land.
That's true, isn't it?
But no, you'd still give it to your brother and you'd walk around strapping yourself. I gotta suffer more. But anyway, I know what you're saying about like over reliance, but that's like I said, that's the beautiful thing about
purely personal way.
Sure,
It's like
sure.
I think the thing that bothers me about it is it's like I think I depend on it too much to make me social.
To make you social?
Yeah, like
You think you're more social when you're high?
I think so.
Right on.
I mean, just
I'm asking you. I don't know.
The day so far.
You're the one that knows.
Yeah, that's fair. But no, it's like it feels like it allows me to communicate my imagination. And sometimes when I feel like I'm gaining something of value from the experience, sometimes it seems like I'm communicating things to myself that I really needed to know. And it's
like it allowed you to listen to yourself, so to speak.
Like there's some sort of genuine sacrament in it.
I mean, like, so is it like you're able to hear that inner voice a little bit better?
It's kind of like, I've thought this from the beginning, Like from day one, I've always thought this. It seems like I'm more apt to hear the thoughts that I have throughout the day
Yeah.
that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
Like, to some degree, it is a direct experience of my subconscious mind kind of blending with my conscious mind and kind of forming this reality versus imagination dichotomy. Like, there is some genuine wisdom to be gained from it.
Yes.
And one of the things I remember reading in college that I never forgot was Carl Jung, basically like this madman cowboy psychologist from the 20th century who was such a mad lad he decided to try and induce schizophrenia in himself as a form of psychological experiment. I'm summarizing a lot, but like point is like this is the guy I remember reading him say somebody asked him a question about psychedelics, like, what do you think is up with psychedelics? What is coming up in people's, like, conscious minds? Like, what do you think of altered states of consciousness? And his response was, people should be more cautious of wisdom they haven't earned. And especially when it comes to marijuana, it's like, I was that guy who was like, I was checking the sources, I was fact checking myself, I was cross referencing things. Is this okay? Like, is this a smart thing to do? And being very like super meticulous about my decision over it. And it was like, in a way, it feels like there's some wisdom from marijuana that I have definitely earned.
It's such a kind of curious statement in this.
I say that.
I love Carl Jung too because his ideas of the universal consciousness are something that I resonate with. I think there's some validity to that.
Well, and I say all that because I acknowledge as much as anyone else, and believe me, I have partaken of the sacrament.
Yeah.
And I am...
I love that you call it a sacrament. That's funny.
But
cool.
I also acknowledge that, like, there's a lot more to it than just a Mr. T PSA. Don't do drugs, kids. Thinking about kids doing drugs makes me mad.
Just say no. Just say no, everyone. Leave more for me.
Well, it's like, for one, when you're a kid, like, if you grow up the way I grew up, like, I didn't need anything.
Right.
Like, I didn't need anything to alter my consciousness, and I didn't need anything to figure out I could do that. But that is all that it is, isn't that? That is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is an altered state of consciousness, and frankly, like, I think I can see how some people get annoyed with weed culture because there is this tendency for everyone to social justice it. And
I don't think that's the case, though. I think it looks like that, and I think that the right has pushed marijuana smokers to the left.
Yeah, I can see.
But
see
I
how
I don't think that that's the reality because I know a lot of Trump supporters smoking that Mary Jane.
Well, it's like I can see how.
I mean,
it's
it
like,
just, you know what I mean, like.
All I'm saying is I can see that perspective, how it's like to somebody who has not partaken, to an uninitiate, we'll say.
Yeah.
I could see how
well,
it's
to
like,
an uninformed person who thinks that everybody that smokes weed is a hippie.
Somebody who's never...
and therefore classifies hippies as liberal,
like somebody who's never experienced the weed or the culture.
Right.
Like, it's just not a part of it's not in their peripherals. I can see how it would come across as kind of annoying. But even still, it's like, as somebody who sees that perspective, dude, like stoner culture is, it's always been the most relaxed. It's put me into conversations and in contact with people that I didn't have anything in common with them, but we were all gonna chill out and just be cool for the next couple hours.
Well, that's part of it. Is marijuana kind of just relaxes you, right? It's kind of different than alcohol. Like alcohol doesn't necessarily relax your anxieties. You know what I mean? Like not like marijuana does. You know, like you can go to the bar and fucking drink a couple, and you can numb all that pain. You can numb it so you don't feel it anymore, but your anxieties are still there.
Alcohol doesn't help you fix any of those anxieties. All it does is just turn them off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I mean, I guess in some ways, you know, like marijuana kind of turns them off too, right? But I think there's a different outcome to the switch that's being used. You know, like I give this. There's an example I give a lot, and if I've given it in another podcast, well, you'll hear it again. So, take 10 people, put them in a room. You can have all the alcohol you want. 24 hours, or you know, let's say you put them in there at midnight or whatever, right? Go party, go have a good time, whatever. We'll call it 24 hours. We'll call it 8 hours. All the alcohol you want. You come back 4 hours later. Or 8 hours, whatever.
What do you think you're going to see?
What do you think you're going to find in that room? I bet you there's blood on the walls. I bet you at least 2 people fought each other. There might be multiple deaths. Like, literally, like, there might be an alcohol poisoning. You ever heard of somebody dying from a marijuana overdose? No, you have not, because it won't happen. I've seen Joey Diaz just drop milligram after milligram. I think the worst thing's going to happen, you're going to pass out and have a really good sleep.
There was one chimp in like the 50s on record as being poisoned by marijuana. But since then, I've seen a few things bouncing around corroborating that wasn't even weed. They were pumping it into the chimp's face through a face mask. Wow. Connected to a hose.
A chimp.
And it wasn't even weed. They asphyxiated the chimp.
I was getting ready to say, yeah, they choked the damn thing. Yeah. Yes, you can suffocate somebody with enough smoke in a mask.
To date, there's not even a chimpanzee that's asphyxiated.
You know what? I want to give a shout out to that chimp. I just want, on behalf of humanity, I'm sorry. That's so wrong.
Harambe Senior.
Harambe, yeah. But nah. So yeah, and you know, people are gonna fight. You're gonna have some girl's gonna be over in the corner crying. About 2 or 3 girls are gonna be trying to console her and hold her hair. These dudes are gonna be fighting because they want to fuck one of the chicks. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
That's the side of people that comes out.
You take the same 10 people, you put them in a room, 8 hours, smoke all the weed you want, eat all the edibles and cookies or whatever you want to do. I don't care. Right? Dab it up.
You'll be lucky to find one of those people awake.
4 hours later? Yeah. But you're going to walk in, you're going to have 10 people, they're all now best friends. They're going to be singing Kumbaya together. They're going to be best friends. They're going to have shared their stories and their traumas with each other. They might even pass the teddy bear around the circle. Who knows? They got a song. They all wrote a song together. You know what I mean? And they'll play it for you gladly. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like, you're talking about two totally different. That's why I don't classify marijuana with alcohol.
Well, and
I don't classify marijuana with alcohol at all, because I think alcohol is more akin to a real drug like heroin or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like some shit that you can overdose on in a night, kind of shit like that. You know
I
what
have
I mean?
that on cap too. That's because alcohol affects your dopamine receptors, like all those hard drugs do.
Yeah,
it's not what weed does.
no.
like you might get a few like dopey things that come along for the ride because it's like you get in the water and it's like shit. I never thought about how awesome it is that I can swim. I'm a marvel. It's like, yeah, there's a few dopey experiences that come along for the ride, but
I love it because then, like, every now and then you just don't take some for granted that you would take for granted otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, man, I'm really glad I have some water.
well, there's gratitude. It brings out a natural gratitude.
It does bring out a gratitude.
And it's like a familiar, nostalgic gratitude.
Especially like after you get past that first in your little psychedelic, weirded out, paranoid, you know, that first time when it hits you and you're just like, what happened to, you know what I mean? And like, you know, but after you get used to smoking herb, like that the frequency of those is, especially if you're like a regular smoker. I don't know, if you like smoke once a week or some shit, you might still get to experience it. Like I've thought about taking a tolerance break, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just so I can wait like a week and like really like first time after a week is gonna like feel so.
Well, my big thing
fresh.
is because I was talking about how like I've had genuinely mystical experiences.
Sure.
It's just growing up, mystical just felt like an altered state of consciousness without being able to kind of influence that on a whim.
But wouldn't you say it's still a mystical experience? Because here's my question. When I think about like some of the famous artists or musicians who maybe used heroin to get into their creative spaces, like does the fact that heroin took you to the mystical experience devalue the mystical experience?
Or like Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Fucking
Like does doing acid mean that it's not a mystical experience because I used a crutch or a cheat code to get to the mystical experience?
See, I don't think so. But here's the one thing I will say, because I would like it to be clear that like I don't take positions very lightly.
Okay.
I don't take positions lightly, and I am firmly in the 420 camp because I've had direct experience of it. Like that's how confident I am. But the one thing that I think bothers me about it above all others personally is it definitely negates my dreams.
Your sleeping dreams, your REM dreams?
I don't know if I would imagine it's not the same for everyone, but for me personally, I dream significantly less.
It is the same for everyone. It's a byproduct. It inhibits your REM sleep. So does alcohol.
Yeah. And the thing is I've had profound.
So if you stop smoking weed, you will have dreams.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
And they will be intense again.
Is I've had profoundly mystical experiences dreaming.
but do you think that the mystical experiences while you're alive is like it's almost like you're dreaming while you're awake?
Yeah, no, I think it probably is. I think that is the nature of your subconscious and your conscious mind kind of interweaving.
Mm-hmm.
I think to some degree, like, I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1 or that this is even a sophisticated theory I have, but it's like, I think you can kind of feel how your subconscious is interacting with your conscious mind, and I think it's there like a tool. Like you can bend your subconscious mind into certain shapes. It's like, oh, this is the keyhole my mind fits when I shape it this way, or when I alter my mind this way, or when I do this. And I think very few people think like that, because I think especially in America, I've heard somebody say this before, that Americans are very unpsychological in their attitude. Like, Americans have this tendency to get behind a cause or a movement or an activity rather than, like, kind of introspect at home in town. Like, there's always been this enterprise has always driven America. So it's not common for people to sit around and discuss, well, consciously I was thinking this, but subconsciously I realized this was what I was pursuing.
I agree with you that Americans are not in tune with themselves, that they have been branded in the consumer marketplace, and it's only getting worse for the people that are asleep. The people that and I think that for the people that benefit from people being asleep, the further we get from our soul and being connected to our own soul, the better it is for the banks. And I think American culture for the last 50 plus years, maybe 70 plus years, has been bent on that by the corporate states of America. And if they have their way, the whole world will be like that, and we'll just all be a bunch of consumers that just want, the newest, shiniest thing, and that will be motivated to do it. They don't see, that's one thing that I don't know why marijuana is illegal, but one of the things is you're not a this is something that takes away from your productivity, or oh my gosh, it brings you contentment so that you're like, do I really need to chase the carrot? I've already got 5 carrots in my bag. Do I need to chase this one too? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, marijuana is like stopping and smelling the roses once in a while. What are you looking up, Bob?
Just wanted that on cap.
He keeps saying on cap. What does that mean? I want that on cap.
I only picked it up recently too. It's new slang for fact. Like, I have the deets, the receipts.
Hold on, because I thought cap meant it was a lie. So now on cap means it's the truth?
Apparently.
Good point.
Somebody made some. Quit making stuff up.
My etymology.
Let me pull out my old my mic apps. Quit making stuff up.
Sorry, my socio-etymological analysis was...
My socio-etymological analysis. My socio-etymological analysis. That's not the greatest phrase I've heard today. I don't know what is. Happy 420 is a better one, though. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that was awesome.
But no, anyways, I just wanted to reconfirm for myself. Look at that. I just wanted to reestablish for myself that indeed it is federally recognized as legal.
What?
As of last year.
What?
Yeah, I keep saying that to people.
Put that on cap again. Dilagin.
No, it's been legal as of April 11th.
Federally legal.
2020.
Hold on, whoa. You were telling me that in the United States of these Americas, that marijuana is federally legal. If this isn't the best 420 I've ever had,
the House passed legislation.
It's not the best 420 I've ever had, but it's a good one. I mean, I'm excited.
The House passed legislation Friday that would legalize marijuana nationwide.
April 1st. Dude, this is an April Fool's joke. You see the date? April 1st, 2022. You sure this is NBC?
You think?
That's ABC. And hold on, scroll down. Does it say NBC over here and ABC up there?
No, it says NBC and MSNBC.
Okay.
I would imagine it's the same NBCs.
Okay. I'm good. I'm trusting that we're looking at an actual NBC News website.
220 to 204 is a largely party line vote.
I'm just going to read this for the people. The House passed legislation Friday, which was the Friday before this, April the 1st of last year, that would legalize marijuana nationwide, eliminating criminal penalties for anyone who manufactures, distributes, or possesses the substance. What the fuck? Are you kidding me?
See,
Lawmakers, how do I not know this?
I keep telling people.
Where did the internet go? Why didn't the internet inform me? Nobody. I know you can't see us because the computer's like in the way and stuff.
Because Elon didn't have Twitter.
No, it's because Chet is like really, just me and my phone. But anyway, go back. I want to do the whole legislation. Okay. Lawmakers approved the measure 220 to 204, largely party line. Republicans Tom McClintock of Cali and Matt Gaetz and Brian Mast of Florida voted in favor. So Republicans voting in favor, nice. While Democrats Chris Pappas of New Hampshire and Henry Kohler of Texas voted against it. See, the Democrat-Republican thing is really weird to me, how it's flopping. And the fact that somebody from New Hampshire, what is he? How can he be from Hampshire if he voted against hemp? Anyway,
don't make no sense.
The legislation dubbed the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act passed in the House last year. Why did I not hear about this? But did not move forward in the Senate. Whoa. In addition to decriminalizing marijuana at the federal level. Wait a second.
2021, it did not move forward in the Senate. But last year.
Okay, but did not move forward in the Senate. In addition to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, the bill would establish procedures for expunging previous convictions, from people's records and impose a tax on the sale of cannabis products. Okay, fine. The tax would begin at 5%, eventually increase to 8%. Funding raised through the tax would go towards the fund to provide job training, mentoring, substance use treatment, legal aid, and reentry services, and youth recreation programs. It would also provide loans to help small businesses in the cannabis industry that are owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, a summary of the bill said. I tried to get this passed. I helped try to get this passed in Ohio a couple years ago. I was out in the middle of COVID, in the middle of winter, talking about, excuse me, do you support marijuana? Would you sign my petition? It didn't go through in Ohio because Ohio is full of a bunch of... So anyway, where was I? Yeah, because like Ohio right now is so messed up because the people who were civil disobedience throughout the prohibition of marijuana are not allowed to take advantage of the legal marijuana, and specifically in Ohio. It was in Ohio, the people that are making the real money off of marijuana are the people that made it illegal in the first place. Like it's Ohio's kind of we got work to do. All right, legislation landmark is one of the most important criminal justice reform bills in recent history. That's probably the only thing I've ever agreed with Nancy Pelosi saying. Pelosi said the legislation would deliver justice for those harmed by the brutal, unfair consequences of criminalization, open opportunities for people to participate in the industry, and decriminalize put at the federal level, so we do not repeat the grave mistakes of our past. I totally agree with Nancy Pelosi on that. Several advocacy groups applauded passage of the measure Friday. I'm sorry I'm giving you this news a year late. And for all y'all laughing at me, you're welcome. Several advocacy groups applauded passage of the measure Friday last year, April, including the Marijuana Policy Project. To this day, people across the country are still experiencing the damaging effects of the war on cannabis. I know I'm a year late, but this is the best thing in my marijuana life in the last year. And last year I smoked marijuana for the first time legally, which was awesome. Like, to know that I was doing it legally was really cool. It was for my birthday. It was my birthday present to myself. Happy birthday. Happy 420 too. What's up? So anyway, meanwhile, Senator Chuck Schumer has been working with Senator Wyden of Oregon and Cory Booker of New Jersey to chair similar legalization legislations in their chambers. Projects for passing such a bill in the Senate appear to be low because Democrats would need all of their members and 10 Republicans to overcome the 60-vote hurdle needed to advance the final vote. And so that's what I'm saying. The House passed it, but the Senate did not, bro. Marijuana is not legal in the United States.
Not yet.
The House passed it. So I'm not as excited as I was thinking I was. And if you're laughing at me still, you're welcome. Because no, the House passed it, but the Senate wouldn't, because fucking Mitch McConnell probably. Yeah. That should be what the House passes. I would love that. Like that bill again is very similar to the bill that I was trying to get signatures for a petition.
Yeah, the BS one where all the specific registered dispensaries were going to have exclusive rights to it.
Yeah, no, that's what we've got now. We've got this situation where, if anybody remembers John Boehner from like the early 2000s, he was like the Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell of his time. And the Pope came to visit, and he went into confession with the Pope, and he came out and just like retired from politics. And the next thing you know, he's like working on marijuana legislation. The ones that basically mean that only people that control the marijuana industry in the state of Ohio are like a few select families type shit. Basically some heavy mafioso type fucking...
I had a biology teacher who quit working for the school to go get behind that.
Yeah.
Behind the dispensaries.
And I am. And I think Ohio needs to change its laws. I think Ohio's being a bunch of Jacobs. And sorry to all the Jacobs that I used your name in a negative connotation like that. But I think Ohio needs to pull their buttocks out of their buttocks. And like this the government should not be there to make monopolies. And that's what they did. That's what they tried to do. Look, the people of Ohio were so smart that when they first tried to blast it past us, they tried to have us sign it on petitions to basically legalize monopolies in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, and Ohio people were like, yeah, we want marijuana, but I'm not voting for that, including myself. I didn't vote for marijuana legalization on that first time because I knew they wrapped that crap in there. You know what I mean? But it finally got passed. I don't know.
There's more than one.
They finally pushed it through. The people that wanted to push it through so that they could make their money pushed it through, and they're making their money. And they made it really hard for anybody to get the licensing. There was, like in the beginning, it was only like 5 people could grow in the whole state or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, and the laws are such that if you've got like a felony, so if you were ever one of those people that were caught with distributing marijuana, that meant that you had most likely a felony, right? So now you can't participate in the legal stuff because when it was illegal, you were doing it. You know what I mean? Like, how that's so foul. That's just like such a spit in the face, bro.
And Ohio was intelligent enough to recognize there's more than one way to build a concentration camp.
Wow, what?
Yeah, you can just... never mind.
Well, what's stupid is, you go to Michigan, which is like literally a couple hours away, and they've got some of the best marijuana laws there are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think Michigan allows more plants than most states, including California, like as far as what you can grow on your own. I think, and more seedlings and more freedom as far as like, recreational use and how much you can have on you at a time.
That'd be a lot more beneficial down in Ohio. even just considering it from the herbalist side of things. Like there's more there's less stringent laws around how you're supposed to harvest crops.
Where, here?
Crops you grow on your private property. The implications alone for farmers.
Yeah, that's part of it, right? Is like how much of that tax base are we just losing?
Because I think they feed into each
How
other.
How much of the marijuana? I think that's the question for states moving forward: is how much of the marijuana economy do you want to miss out on?
You know what? That's a good question. Is how much has criminalizing marijuana ultimately influenced, like, added? I that's a question I would be curious to have an answer to. How much legislation over what you're allowed to do with your farmland has been crept in alongside the move to criminalize marijuana? Because I bet it's been a significant effect. I would bet you that it's a hypothesis, but I'm guessing what we'd see if we ran the study is a lot of legislation has probably been influenced as a result, because it's been one of those issues that ping pongs back and forth across societies, so that you can basically socially engineer people with the political theatrics, like what's been going on for the last 100 years. Ultimately, I think, for me, like, marijuana is a close-cut case of But for me, marijuana is a clear-cut case of, dude, it's just simple libertarian chillness.
Will you give me a tissue, Bob?
But like a simple libertarian attitude towards the other people in your country would be enough to just have the common sense to say, not my business.
Yeah.
But it's still being used as political theatrics in a lot of ways. But we're still just talking about the smokescreen, so to speak.
Yeah, and for what, right? Like, I guess, who says how much I agree with DuPont and the whole theory of people wanting to make it illegal for racist or industrial purposes. Sounds legit to me.
I believe that shit.
I mean, it does sound legit, but I think I live in a time now that I don't just take what I've heard as fact, right? But and it sounds legal, reasonable, and possible, and logical, so to speak, that they did that. I don't understand the purpose other than just pure greed, But I guess what? Here, actually, I do. Part of it's the mystical experiences, man. You got a Christianity in the United States in the 1930s that obviously has some power, right? Because they were able to get, a couple years earlier, the whole prohibition thing going on, right? That come from mostly your like really hardcore fundamental
the Puritan Protestant side, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll notice Catholics are a lot more loosey-goosey about substances.
Well, they're drinking wine every Sunday, right? So they're like okay with, yeah. As for the Protestants, not so much, right? And especially your like really hardcore types, we had some pretty hardcore types that like they didn't even want music. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you see these jazz musicians smoking this Mary Jane, and they happen to also be another race, and you're like, no, we can't have the devil. That's the devil. You know what I mean? Like that's
there were demographics.
One of the terms is the devil's lettuce, right?
There were demographics you could move.
Yeah.
If you played to that paranoia or that anxiety over that issue.
For sure.
And it's like, that's the kind of thing that like...
And then you start telling people how bad it is and how it makes people crazy and you start associating it with the dregs of the the addicts and the harder drugs, shit like that. You know what I mean? And like right now, like there are countries where if you talk to people in that country, their government, their news, whatever, has told them that marijuana is bad and it makes you crazy. You know? And they firmly believe it. They're like, oh no, I can't do marijuana. It's bad for your health. It's illegal. It's this. It's that. It's basically every argument that people used to have before it was legal here.
This is another thing. Another buddy of mine from work. This is another rabbit hole he took me down. You know, in Thailand, it is absolutely like not weed friendly. It's not welcome here. We don't grow it. If you get caught with it, it's your ass. Like, they do not tolerate the weed at all.
Right.
The only instances of places where you'll find people have that attitude towards weed are places like Thailand, where it's a jailable offense to make a joke about the emperor of Thailand.
Right.
Like, if you are caught saying something, like, you can literally be jailed over saying that suit doesn't suit him.
Right.
Like, that's a bad look for him. That's a jailable offense in Thailand. These are the types of places, other than the United States, around the world, these are the types of places that have that policy towards weed, like, automatically.
I mean, I think a lot of people in the United States had that attitude prior to it becoming legal. I mean, I know a lot of my life, some people that I'd interact with that, people that didn't grow up around it, you know what I mean, that just had no real true exposure to it in and of it themselves, for themselves.
Yeah. It's when it's something alien.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said a minute ago. Like, I don't like to just believe crap that other people say and then I take it for fact.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds logical, it sounds reasonable, the whole racism kind of view on it, the whole, the industry. It sounds reasonable, it sounds logical, but just because I saw it on a Netflix video doesn't mean it's all true. But I don't know any other reason why marijuana would be made illegal. And when I know of racism in the United States, it sounds completely plausible to me that they're like, oh no, that's what those Native Americans do. That's what those black people, the black jazz players are doing. No, way. Nah, way. We can't be smoking that tweed, bro. And look, that's funny because I did a little Minnesota Canadian thing. And can Canada... I'm so thankful for Canada too, because they started legalizing it before we did, before like even California. Like, look, really, weed used to be just like you would get what you got. It was some Reggie all the time, like for the most part. Like, you just get some Reggie. People are like, oh wow, you got some Maui Wowie, but like, nah, I got some basically Mexican dirt weed is what I got. Thank you to all the Mexicans that grew my weed for so many years. And then, Canada started doing it, and they started doing like the indoor super, like, now they've got horticulturalists and like they got some science behind it. These aren't just farmers type shit. No.
Like, they've had to figure out how to make shit grow in the Arctic.
Well, yeah.
So they had that coming in with
them. Right.
They brought that to
it. Well, because they're doing it indoor, but they're, this is when we start, like, really getting into, like, people would hear about strains, chocolate Thai stick, the old strains, right? Maui Wowie, Acapulco Gold, blah, 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 whatever the other names are. Those were like the famous strains, but you didn't get that. You're like, does it have seeds or not? You know what I mean? That was your concern. Does it have seeds or not? Because seeds are heavy. And I just bought an eighth, and that's a lot of an eighth. You know what I mean? Like, for real, bro. And then, you know, you got some weed and you're like, man, this is dry, this is dirt, this is good, this is not, blah, blah, blah. Then Canada, they start doing that indoor shit and they start coming out with these kind buds. They cost more too. It's funny because the prices haven't really changed that much, but like getting a $30 eighth or $35 eighth of decent weed back then was not a bad deal. And then Canada started making their kind buds, and all of a sudden that shit was $50 an eighth. And some of it was good and some of it was bad. And then over time, like then it became, there was this good looking weed and then there was like the Mexican weed looking weed. But the good looking weed wasn't always good. It just looked good, smelled good, had some good terpenes or whatever they call them. Terpenes or whatever they are. What's the word I'm thinking of? Terpenes? Terpenes. Anyway.
Yeah. Same page.
But yeah, so nah, bro, like, and I didn't realize it growing up. Like, weed was around me so much. Like, I remember one time my weed dude was like, not everybody can get this, and I was like, what do you mean? Everybody can get weed. Weed's everywhere. He's like, no, they can't. He's like, there's some people that just don't have access. I'm like, well, dear Lord, thank you for the access. I appreciate it. I needed the keys. I did, like
Bob Marley, our Lord,
I love
our Lord and Savior.
No,
Bob Marley,
I ain't doing that to Bob. I'm not doing that to Bob. Bob
who died under the influence for our sins.
No, I'm not doing that to Bob. I'm not doing that to Bob. I give a lot of respect to Bob, not because of his weed. I give a lot of respect to Bob for his soul and his vibe, man. And weed just happens to be part of that. Does weed make Bob Marley, or does Bob Marley make weed? That's what my question. I mean, just because, and even if it is, that's his elixir, then so what?
Yeah.
So what if that's his elixir? You know? I give two shits. And the fact that because the legend is, and I don't know if this is wrong, and I don't want to disrespect Mr. Marley or any of the Marley family by any means. But the legend is always, as I understood it, was that they were like, oh, Bob, you've got a tumor or cancer and we need to cut off your dreads, or you need to quit smoking weed. I can't remember which one it was now that I'm thinking about it. I think it was he wouldn't cut his dreads, and the legend turned in. They said he had to quit smoking weed, and he's like, nah. But anyway, now I fucked it all up, and it doesn't matter anyway. Rest in peace, Bob. I love you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. You're a poet and a prophet, bro. Just like the Red Hot Chili Peppers said, man.
He shot the sheriff.
But not the deputy. Nah, Bob is the dude. And, you know, like I said, you know, to go back to wrap this up and bring it back some old heads, like Willie Nelson, man. You know, Willie Nelson's one of them dudes who's just, like, we're talking, this is a white country dude, man, but he was definitely pro. He's like, wait a minute, hold on, man. This isn't just for, you know, the races, so to speak. Like, it's bullshit, bro. The fact that Willie's still alive is crazy. Like, God bless Willie. Woody Harrelson. I can't think of somebody. Oh, Cheech and Chong would be in Willie's class, definitely. But see, they were the Mexicans, so that was easy, right? It was like, oh, look at them crazy Mexicans. Look, I told you that's what they do. They're smoking that yes guy.
Tommy Chong still kicking it.
Both of them are, aren't they?
I don't know about Cheech, but
I think Cheech Marin is still alive. Cheech Marin's like much more calm down. Tommy is still 420. Go Tommy. Tommy is still like, Tommy's got his own bongs. Tommy went to jail a couple years ago for selling his own bongs type shit. Yeah. Like, I guess they wanted to come after Tommy, but
I remember him talking about learning to read the I Ching while he was in prison. Yeah.
Learning to read?
No, learning to read the I Ching. Have you ever heard of it?
Like the Tai Te Ching?
Well, maybe.
What's the I Ching? Tell me what the I Ching is.
It's this Chinese fortune-telling book. It's basically it's a Chinese form of like astrology and
Okay. Got you.
it's one of those things. It's this little codex that has a mystical like system to it.
Right.
And he was describing how he was in prison and he was like learning to read the I Ching. It's like you roll some bead over a bunch of tiles and whatever it lands on, that's your daily piece of advice from the I Ching.
So it's kind of like reading sticks and stones, huh?
It's kind of like
just
people,
the Chinese version of it.
It's kind of like people reading tarot cards.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, you know, like you see like the movies like the old woman shaman, right? And they're like, "Should we go to war on the 16th?" And she's like,
I will read the
and,
bones.
yeah, we'll read the bones. The bones say it's a good day to die, or some shit like that. Yeah. But yeah, so the old heads, like, especially like I remember in the 90s, man, Snoop Dogg, like Snoop was like, because Snoop's a little bit older. He's not much older than me, but you know, he was famous when he was like super young.
Yeah.
And he had a hat. There was a ball cap that had just that marijuana leaf on it. I love that hat. I should make one and start selling it in a merchandise store again, because that hat was
Just make it all red.
like, and we're talking about like it was illegal everywhere, man. And I loved wearing that hat. Like, I kind of wanted to be that promoter too. I just never found my way or my courage, I guess, because I think it takes a lot of courage to be like, I'm breaking the law. You know I am. I'm so, you know what I mean? For any of like, you know, Willie, Snoop, Matthew McConaughey, any of those people, right? Like,
well, specifically with Willie and Bob.
Willie and Bob.
Yeah, Willie Nelson and Bob Marley. Especially with them, it was like they had a clear like they had a clear stance on it.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have to bother you with it, but if you were like, you gotta stop, they're like, fuck you.
Right.
It's my life.
Right.
And it's like there is that sort of
like somebody's not just going to go arrest them and just walk into their house, but like, we know you have marijuana because
like
you told us.
It's like old school manly courage.
There is some of that, and
It's like in the idea of being like, yeah, no, I'm gonna break the law because at the end of the day, I'm a libertarian. That's how I see things.
And go libertarians for that too. I got I like that part of the libertarian.
I mean that's always been obvious to me that like libertarianism and weed culture go hand in hand.
Really?
So it's like a lot of the time I'm thinking of them as the same crowd of people.
I don't, because I think libertarians have some very conservative people in them too.
But I mean, like,
that's one of the things about libertarianism is there's like this intermingling of like what we traditionally think of political topics, and where like a person can be pro marijuana and pro gun.
Well, right? I would be confident in saying to a libertarian to their face, if you don't believe in the legalization of marijuana, you're a hypocrite. if you're a member of the Libertarian Party, because this is a fundamental example of what libertarian values are. If I don't hinge on your right to do whatever you want, you ain't got the right to tell me to do anything I don't want.
Right.
That is the fundamental core of libertarian values.
And that's one of my fundamental cores. I don't necessarily consider myself a libertarian, but I definitely feel that way. That's why I can't hate on, like, when people are like, oh, they're gay. I'm like, I don't care if they're gay. I don't care if Cliff and Diff want to go do what they do. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care how many people you sleep with. That's your business.
Yeah.
How's it hurting me?
Yeah. It's like,
how's it hurting me? How's it affecting me at all?
If
we have more women for the rest of us.
I mean, yeah. What good citizen said.
Yeah. But I don't know. I say all that to say, like, I think of it as a tool.
A tool.
Yeah.
What's a tool?
Weed.
Sure.
I think of it as a tool, and I think people aren't in the. I think that I would like that to be the resounding lesson.
That's what
today
Dylan wants to share on 420.
Is that I think it's a tool, and I think people don't look at it that way in America because we're very unpsychological. Like, people don't do a lot of. People aren't really in the habit of, like, spending time with themselves. Like, I think there's a dearth. I think there's a huge absence of imagination.
You said a lot, and I agree with 99.9999%. I'm only leaving a little bit because I'm sure there was something you said that I might not agree with, but yeah, no, I feel you, bro. Yeah. And I like the idea of it. I think for some people that would be beneficial to see it as a tool.
Like, your psyche is what you have to work with.
And you know, I think it kind of goes along the lines of the people that would recommend like microdosing or doing a dose of some shrooms kind of thing, or doing the little frog lick, and going on that experience. You know what I mean? To go into yourself and outside of yourself, and to go into your soul, which is actually, once you get in there, you realize it's just part of the big soul. You know what I mean, kind of thing. So,
and what?
I think that being in touch with that. Being in touch with your soul, because once you get in touch with your soul, like, you really get an opportunity to start really getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
Because other than that, you're like a lot of shit that people have projected on. A lot of people are, you know what I mean? They're just shit that people have projected on you. It's just how you fit into whatever context, situation you were presented with, and the way that you figured out to be the most comfortable, unless you're sadistic and want to intentionally make yourself uncomfortable. But yeah, I pointed at you when I said that.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, it's like what Bruce Lee says, that big Bruce Lee quote. He's like, you must learn to be like water.
Yes, I love that.
You must learn to change your shape.
Yeah.
You have to be
formless.
That involves being in your body.
When water's in the box, it is the box. When water's in the glass, it is the glass. Be like water. Be formless. That's not exact, but it's close. You got something to say, good citizen?
What's that one guy who, I can't remember. He went on Rogan. He, like, listens to his, well, never mind. I'm butchering it.
Okay.
But listen.
Well, no, I say that because it's like, that's kind of what getting in touch with your soul is like. It's like embracing a new experience.
Is it David
Goggins?
Yeah.
David Goggins? The, like, Super SEAL dude?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the...
That's who he's like? Like, I have to punish myself. I have to push myself beyond my limits
That's what I thought.
every day, at least once a day, or I don't feel like I'm alive. David Goggins, like, much love. He motivates a lot of people, and I wonder, like, that dude. That's an addiction too.
Yeah.
And it's a coping skill. Like in a way, it's like people who cut themselves. I just want to feel, or I just want to numb the pain. I don't want to feel this over here, so I'm going to create this pain so I can feel it over here.
See, that's what a lot of people I know would describe weed as being. It's an addiction. It's a way of numbing the pain.
It's a coping.
Yeah.
That's why instead of calling it, I mean, it can lead to an addiction, but it's a coping, right?
Yeah.
Everything we're doing is coping, bro. We're all trying to kind of figure our way. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to navigate through this world and the world that has been presented mostly to us in our first, like, 10 years?
Well, it's like,
is
it an addiction? Is it a cope, or is it a tool?
It can be all the above. you use the wrong tool the wrong way, like you can hurt yourself.
And that's what I think David Goggins' cope is it's like it's a cope, yeah, it can be an addiction. It almost certainly is, but it's like it's more than just those two things. It's like it's a tool. And it's a tool you use to form the water.
Yeah. First of all, I don't pretend that there aren't things like runner's high and there aren't really great dopamine hits off of doing and having a really good exercise. I'm not trying to knock that at all. I'm not trying to knock anybody who chooses exercise as their coping mechanism. Truthfully, it's probably one that if you can utilize exercise as the way that you cope and you deal with your emotions and your stresses and your stuff without going to the addictive side. And I think that going to the addictive side can be kind of hard to do. You know, I think that, you know, some people, you know, it even if it does, it's the worst addiction. It's the worst, it's the best one to have. Like, if you're going to be addicted to something, be addicted to exercise.
Like,
be addicted to fucking running. You know what I mean? Like that's so much better than heroin or fentanyl or...
Like what I was saying earlier about how Americans seem like we have a certain mindset that involves not thinking about our own psychology.
Yeah.
It seems, it kind of strikes me now as a more European attitude to have that, like, well, yeah, that's what addictions are, is they are matters of the soul.
Addictions are matters of the soul.
That seems like a more classically European way to think. Like, why do I stop at the coffee shop and dump 4.5 teaspoons of sugar into my coffee so that it's sticking above the actual coffee I'm drinking?
Yeah.
Like, why do I do that? It's because, well, I've set aside this time of the day because it's like, you know what, this is where I just hype myself up on this sugar, I overstimulate myself, I sit down, I pull my notebook and my pen out, and this is when Kierkegaard writes, like, his major philosophical treatise.
On coffee?
On coffee and copious amounts of sugar. But it's like, ultimately, it's like, yeah, you can look at it from the minimalist perspective of, well, yeah, the sugar and the caffeine, those are stimulants, and they're acting as stimulants, and you are also getting this generated sense of hyperdigestion because of the sugar and the bacteria it's feeding. You can be super minimalist about that and be like, okay, yeah, this is an addiction, and this is how it functions. But it's like, Kierkegaard did that shit because that was when he was able to hyper-focus himself in order to actually write his philosophical treatise that influenced existential philosophers for the next 200 years. Like, that was an issue, like, that was Kierkegaard managing his soul in some way. And it's like that's, I feel like that's a more classically European way to kind of look at things, which it, like, the matters of the soul are matters of the psychological and how you manage your own psychology and how you, like, frame and layer your thinking. And in America, I feel like we're more given towards talking about addictions or using the word addictions when really what we're talking about is like issues of the soul. It's like issues of, okay, psychologically I'm trying to like reframe things, the way I'm looking at things. And it's like I think as somebody who's spent a lot of time delving into very European, like very deep European trains of thought, it's like, I think that's to our big detriment, and I think that's, I think I'm trying to connect the values of 420 and the broader psychological issues that I see at play in people's lives.
Well, I mean, I think we recognize that, like, at least for some people, like, we all have our different ways to cope, and that's one way to use marijuana, right? And it's a pretty common way. It's also, it's like alcohol, right? Some people use it to cope. Some people use it for socializing. You know what I mean? There's definitely those people that's their goal and their purpose. Now, alcohol will grab you physically, and now all of a sudden you're physically addicted to it.
Well,
right?
You think about those things like what they've always been called, their spirits.
Sure. But when we get to that, what you're talking about with like managing our soul, in many ways it is. That's what coping is, right? Coaching is trying to manage your situation. You know what I mean? How am I going to get through whatever this experience is, right? And how am I going to adjust or deal with it, right? When we talk about cope, it oftentimes has like this negative connotation, right? Obviously, you're coping with something that has happened to you in a negative way. You're trying to heal or whatever have you, right? You're coping with it. So let's say you are growing up in a highly abusive home, right? And so you find ways to not feel that pain. Because usually that's what coping is coping. That's the negative connotation, right? Is there's some kind of pain, whether physical, psychological, spiritual, and so that's where, for me, I like, okay, yeah, it could be spiritual. It could be all the way down to the soul, Or Kierkegaard could just be a person that realizes that, you know what, he's ADD. He needs a stimulant in order to be able to focus and write.
Yeah.
That coffee sugar cocktail was his Adderall.
Yep.
Because he didn't have cocaine. You know what I mean? And maybe, Kierkegaard, I could see that because, it's kind of like Kanye West, right? You think about some of these artists and some of these philosophers. You think they're just normal, everyday looking ass people? Like, no, these are the people that got made fun of in school. The people are like, oh, you're weird. You know what I mean? These two people that felt like outcasts a lot of times. You know what I mean? They were observers, right? They felt like they're sitting from the outside. Not all of them, don't get me wrong. Some of them found their tribe, so to speak. But you think about a lot of, and even artists today, you know what I mean? Like, the use of cocaine or heroin or other drugs by major artists over the course of time is pretty well understood and recorded. Whether we're talking about musicians or painters or whatever, Now, some of them are doing it to cope. Some of them are doing it because it helps their art. Does the guy cut off his ear for art because he's sober? You know what I mean? Like, and even if he is, that means it really hurt when he cut off his ear.
But if you think about it as like, okay, this is somebody who, whatever he was experiencing, something occurred to him, as far as I can tell. He wanted to wake up and not recognize something about himself again. That's what that makes me think of. Van Gogh cutting his ear off. That's what I mean. Like, the idea that it's like you just reach an age, you reach a point in your life, and you decide, I recognize everything on me.
I mean, I get it. I've had that thought of like driving down the road and like, damn, if I just went and hit that tree, wonder what would happen. I kind of know what would happen, but you know what I mean? But a lot of people have those thoughts. Very few of them follow through.
Yeah.
Very few of them go, I want to change something about myself. And so they're like, I'm going to lop off my ear. These days, a lot of people, I would go get a nose piercing or something.
Those Hindu priests, like the guy who lifted his arm and just never put it down to the point where it's atrophied and stuck that way.
And what I'm saying though is that's not normal, right? There's no bell curve. You're going to find that within the normal spectrum, right? These are people that, and what did you say earlier? Sometimes, what did you say? It's wisdom that you haven't earned.
We should be cautious of wisdom.
Yeah. So sometimes when you have wisdom, I don't necessarily like that phrase, and let me kind of tell you why. Because when I hear that phrase, what I think of when I had my existential experience. And one way that I would describe it is I knocked on the door opened, and I was flooded. I didn't have the ability, the aptitude to filter all the information that was coming at me, right? And so therefore my mind kind of breaks, right? We call it a psychological break, right? And so
those have a way of feeling like some of the most profound moments of your life after they're over.
It was one of the most profound experiences of my life while it was happening. I was very aware of that. I embraced it. And
something just happened that changed me.
Yeah. Well, it's complicated. My point in what were we talking about right before that?
We were talking about Carl Jung's advice to be cautious of wisdom you haven't earned.
So, like, sometimes the wisdom you haven't earned, be cautious, because it'll make you go a little bit crazy. And maybe that's why I don't like it, because the truth of it is like, I didn't earn it. I didn't earn the wisdom that I was given.
Yeah, that made it scary.
Yeah. Well, and it was like so much at one time. It's like, I'm just feeling flooded. You know what I mean? And and a lot of people, I was smoking heavy amounts of marijuana at the time, because I smoked heavy amounts of marijuana most of my life. And so, but what was that? Maybe that was just we could just say, you know what? Chet hadn't had REM sleep for about 2 decades, so maybe he went a little loopy. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what it was. Maybe because I wasn't doing REM sleep, my brain was like, you're gonna get some REM sleep while you're awake, motherfucker. Here's a fucking awake dream, dude.
Yeah.
And I have to credit marijuana. Like, I have cheated. I cheated. There's no doubt in my mind that I've had walks and talks with God. And many of those walks and talks have been walking on the water. There's water. You know what I mean? Like, many of my talks, bro.
I have problems with that quote too, but to me it sounds more like, you're training to scuba dive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting your gear up, you're gonna go look around the coral reefs for a little bit, and you have that one instructor who's a daredevil scuba diver, like has spent weeks on the bottom of the ocean floor. So you turn to that guy and you ask him what to expect. And that Jung's quote to me sounds like when the old scuba diving instructor turns to you and says, well, when you're deep in the abyss, the darkness has a way of just closing you in. And it's like, you're not so worried about what's all the way over there or all the way over here. You just have to worry about what's right in front of you, because the rest is just darkness. He was like, that's what to expect. That's what that sounds like to me.
This sounds like a character out of a Judd Apatow or Adam Sandler movie, bro. Oh my gosh.
It's like, that's what he's warning you about. He's not warning you about the scuba dive that the marijuana will take you on. He's not warning you about the coral reefs. He's somewhere else. He's dealt with different types of matters of the soul.
I guess actually when I talked it out, because at first I was like, I don't like it. And then I realized as I was talking it out, I was like, well, I kind of don't like it because that's true. Like, but like, what are you gonna do? Like, wisdom comes to you, it comes to you. Information comes, data comes, whatever. For me, again, we can rationalize 10,000 types of ways of what caused my mental state. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me if marijuana induced it. I don't care if it was lack of sleep. I don't care if somebody slipped me a Mickey. I don't give a rat's patootie what it was. I don't care if I was being gang stalked and there was part of me that knew it and therefore I had a reaction to it. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, me and God went for a walk. Period. I don't care what took me there. I don't care what took me there. And so if marijuana helps me alleviate the world, like Calgon and some for women in a little bubble bath, or for me when I'm swimming, it's another way that it works for me. That's what works for me. I'm not hurting nobody else. If I cut my life short a few years because I can't breathe, so be it. I've already lived longer than most people lived in history. Like, come on, like how, like if that's my choice to say, you know what, I don't want to be greedy, and oh, by the way, I want to enjoy myself. Like, what's wrong with that?
If that's the cost of me having easy access to the gratitude that will make me realize that on my own and recognize that without having somebody else having to remind me on a motivational poster.
Right. I don't need your dopamine hit, Facebook. I got my own hit.
And it's like, there's something about coffee that just like makes me feel like I want to focus on menial.
But coffee's okay because it makes you more productive. See, coffee makes you a good citizen. You know what I mean? It makes you a good worker. So coffee's cool. Cocaine, not so much. Cocaine, I think it's just because it's so.
When I think of cocaine, I think of the kind of productivity that can ruin your life, or the obsession with productivity that can ruin your life.
Yeah. But you know what? The people who really like cocaine, to me, this is where you said earlier about the soul, in that their energy's already in that way. They already feel that a motivation to just produce and do things for whatever it is, whatever risk reward, whatever, do reward triggers in our brains to get us to do things.
Yeah.
And so so some of those people are like that. And so they're like, you know what, this daggone coffee and sugar ain't quite enough. And that cocaine, I do really good with it. So anyway, happy 420, everyone. Please, if you don't smoke, please consider supporting the legalization of marijuana. It maybe there's a reason why you don't want to support it. Feel free to drop that in the comments.
There will be a link to the CPPP.
The CPPP?
Chet's peer pressure petition.
No. Nah. Because how much... that's something I have not done. If I've ever offered anybody herb and they said no, I just took another hit. I'm like, cool. You ain't got to smoke.
I'm joking because that is one thing I have direct experience of, is being the one guy in the back of the room with a bunch of people my age and like a couple years younger, and being the only one in the back being like, hey, you don't have to hit it. Like, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it.
You don't have to smoke it. And you don't have to smoke it. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
That's something I feel like stoners need to criticize each other about more.
But you think stoners are bad peer pressure?
The young ones.
I think young people are just bad at peer pressure. I don't care if it's playing a game or smoking weed, or we all want to do the same thing. I mean, peer pressures.
I have a buddy who I'm thinking of though, who's my age, a little younger, and he that always seemed like common sense for him too. And it was like,
nah.
anyways,
I I've never really been one on that. Like, if herb is not your thing, herb is not your thing.
yeah.
I'm okay with that. My only thing that I'm really like, I just don't enjoy being around drunk people. So,
Yeah.
and I'm just not around, like, my vibe is not around the type of people. When I was younger, much more, right? But the type of people that want to go do heroin and cocaine and, like, I just never been into, like,
They
alcohol,
never did anything.
marijuana. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have done some coke in my lifetime. I learned that basically it's like Adderall for me. It just, I'm like Kierkegaard or whatever. Like, Adderall just levels me out. But see, that's the thing. Like, I'm already kind of speedy, right? That's why Adderall kind of like levels someone out, because it's almost like there's a speed switch that's not quite on. So it's like, oh yeah, now I feel like I'm at speed, right? Because I've got this Adderall, this cocaine in my brain, man.
Yeah.
So what do I want to do? What I realize is I want to slow down. So you won't catch me drinking coffee, right? Because I don't need any more speed. You'll catch me smoking some weed, trying to relax, trying to calm it down, bring it down a level, bring it down a notch. You know what I mean? I'm already up, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
what do you want? These are my breaks.
yeah, this is not even, yeah, these are my breaks. I'm just trying to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Trying to keep me from bouncing off these walls. And, cocaine scares me, so I don't want to do it a lot, but I also don't get a real high from it. I do cocaine all night long, straight pass out. The girls over here sucking dick, fucking, she done ran to her ATM 3 times or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, those people that are really addicted to cocaine, like that, you know what I mean? They're looking at me like, how the hell are you going to sleep? I'm like, shit, I'm out of coke. I'm going to sleep. Shit. It's time. The sun's coming up. What are you talking about? We've been up all night.
It wasn't that exciting. My brain already worked that way.
Yeah, I'm already, like, I'm cool. Like, no, yeah, really, no. And then watching you just sell your soul for it just totally ruined my high anyway.
Yeah. But it's
like any kind of high I had. Because I didn't really, like, cocaine doesn't get me like that, bro. Like, it doesn't, there's no high. There's no, and for me, I guess a high is like feeling a little bit euphoric, feeling a little elevated, like, that's what a high is to me. Like, whether it's like a runner's high, because I felt that before, or high when I'm smoking weed, Like, to me, that's what being high is. So,
like,
cocaine doesn't give me a high.
Like, it reminds me of about 5 or 6 years ago when I started really working out. Like, there was about a year or two in between high school and it was about a year. It was about a year or two after high school. It was like I kind of just gave up on exercising because it was like I got other shit to worry about. I gotta work a job. I gotta work a job. I gotta get to class. I gotta make time.
You got
to
other
do
priorities.
The homework. Yeah, I gotta. Anyways, point being is like. So I just never made time to go exercise, and I never like worked out unless there was like something that had to be done, unless it was work. And I got so fat, and so like, not just fat, like depressed. Like, I got so depressed that I just started to like gain all this weight, and it was like. I noticed like how much I was just slipping like deeper and deeper into like this big rut. And it was like once I started working out And I started to actually realize, oh shit, like, I can actually control what my body looks like. I can actually sculpt myself into shape. It was like I kept that up for a few years just because it was like, oh shit, I don't have to recognize myself every day. I can actually like alter myself and change my form. It started out as like kind of a nice little like hobby-esque activity. And then it was like I remember going through some real like hard shit for like 2 years. And for that 2 years, it was like I felt like I was on fire, like angry at everything. And it was like I remember like I remember going and working out at the gym every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day it was like I just would show up at the gym, and the rest of the day didn't matter. It didn't matter what else was going on, but like I would get to the gym, and it was like I would not leave the gym until I felt good enough to leave the gym. And it was like a lot of the time I remember almost like I remember going in there high as a kite, like throwing some water on the fire, like just cooling myself off enough so I could just focus on working out.
Mm.
And it was like, again, it's like, I feel like we have a very materialist, very minimalist way of framing things here in America, because I think that lends itself to quick business, wheeling and dealing, and entrepreneurship. And I think there's a cultural attitude in America that feeds right into the whole 420 aspect of things, which is, I think we have a tendency to frame everything in terms of what are my chemical addictions, what am I addicted to, when it's like really whatever you're doing more often than not tells you what you're really trying to wrestle with.
You know, you said earlier that, you know, if you look at it as a tool, and I think that's a really good way to, I think, talk about a lot of things that people think and have opinions on as far as what's good and what's bad. You know, but you said it's a tool, so, you know, like I know what I use a screwdriver for. I use a screwdriver to screw in a screw to hold some things together. So when you call marijuana a tool, what is that tool allowing you to do?
I think part of it, for me personally, I think a part of it's always been it's a tool for communication.
Communication with whom? Whom? Who? I don't know.
Well,
Correct
with
me in the
anybody
comments.
I'm talking to, it's like it'll just reframe the conversation in a way for me where it's like I'll think I'll think a little wittier, I'll communicate a little more clearly, and I have more energy that goes into like communicating an idea. And it's like it sets a good conversational tone, but there's also the aspect of like the weed culture. Like I said, I say there's something sacramental about it for a reason, and that's because people convene, they congregate, and set time aside.
I love that. Like every time you say that right now, just like that choice of a word is so awesome.
Well, it's like that's the sacrament. It's like it's
I
a culture of
get it.
communication
I
in and
definitely
of
get it.
itself. And it's like, if that's not like that's something that like I'll take away from it, regardless of whether that's something I'll take away from it, regardless of whether I ever smoked again in my life. Like if I didn't today, I learned something.
For many years, my church, my communion was me, my Dalmatian, a couple blunts, a bottle of water, and some woods. And most times I actually get myself a little scared because I get myself a little lost. I'm like, because I just start walking down in the hills of Kentucky. But I would, man, and it was just, like that was my communion, man. I was going out there. That was my intention of going out there. I'm gonna go walk with God. I need to get away from everybody. And I'm gonna smoke some weed. Like I call it a cheat code. I mean, I say it all the time. It's a cheat for me. Does it work for everybody? I don't know. I know it works for me. How do I know? Because I know. How do you know if you met God? How do you know if you're right? Nobody knows. I mean, hold on. Not many people know. I know. And I'm very comfortable with it.
Like, do you feel like...
And I think there's a difference in believing and knowing.
Yeah.
Do I feel like what?
Oh, that's probably a good note to end it on.
Are you ready to... I thought we were going 420.
Oh, all the way to 420?
Like 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Damn.
April Fools.
You were going hog wild.
No, I'll never. I would never just assume that anyway. You must be free today, all day. Nah, but that is a good note. And once again, shout out 420 family, 420 community, all the 420 supporters and followers, and the people that have helped make it legal, that have helped that cause for freedom and liberty. You kind of mentioned the libertarians early. It is a form of liberty, and the fact that it's only been illegal for like 100 years, it's just bogus. I don't think anything. If you're not doing, if it doesn't harm somebody else, then I don't see any reason why there should be an illegality to it. And especially the wonderful plant of marijuana that looks good, smells good, makes you feel good. I mean, you can put it in any food, man. It's a herb. It's an herb. And for me, it's a cheat code. And if maybe you've never tried herb, and I don't recommend doing it by yourself the first time. It does have it take a minute for your brain to get used to what's going on, and to really settle in. So, be careful. It's beautiful. We live in a day and age where you can find it at a dispensary. You have the information at your fingertips. Don't be like Joe Rogan and wait until you're an adult. Don't be like Joe Rogan and just believe what everybody always told you. Okay, try it for yourself. Be like Joe Rogan. Try it for yourself and know for yourself. Don't go off what everybody else says. What can you say?